Good afternoon, everybody. This is going to be kind of twofold. What I'm going to do is I'm going to update you on a few investigations that have already been publicized through media releases. And I'm also going to be seeking assistance in locating some individuals who have been identified and are now currently wanted as a result of ongoing investigations into carjackings. So without further delay, good afternoon. I'm Rich Harris. I'm the inspector at the Hold Up Squad, and I want to thank you all for joining us, or joining me here today. I'd like to provide an update on some of the investigations being led by the Hold Up Squad, and in relation to carjackings, in particular in the City of Toronto. As you know, Toronto, we continue to experience a concerning increase in carjackings, but these robberies are not only happening in our city, but are also taking place across the GTA. The Hold Up Squad investigates incidents of carjackings where a weapon is involved, or where not, the MO fits that of an ongoing investigation. I want to assure the public that every investigative avenue is being undertaken in our efforts to identify, arrest the perpetrators for these crimes and to put them before the courts. Uniformed and plainclothes officers are patrolling hotspot areas in the city and continue to make arrests. I've also implemented a team of investigators known as a Carjacking Investigative Team, or the Carjacking Task Force, who are solely dedicated to investigate these carjackings. To date, in 2022, there have been 182 reported carjacking incidents in the City of Toronto. The Hold Up Squad has taken carriage of 136. Also, to date, 56 vehicles that have been stolen in these carjackings have been recovered. Many of these investigations are active and ongoing, and we're working with police services across every jurisdiction to solve these crimes in a timely fashion. And here's an update on a couple of the arrests that have been made in recent times in relation to some of the ongoing investigations. I'm pleased to announce that additional arrests have been made in a recently reported series of carjackings that took place in both August and September of this year. On August 19th, 2022, a 35-year-old man had his vehicle stolen at gunpoint after being approached by a woman and two men in a parking lot near the area of Markham Road and Sheppard Avenue East. A short time later on that same date, around the same area, a 27-year-old man had his vehicle stolen by a woman and two men also at gunpoint. Further investigation revealed that earlier on that date, members of the York Regional Police Service were called to the area of Crosby Avenue and Yonge Street as a result of a robbery, and it was discovered that a man had his vehicle stolen, also at gunpoint, by two male suspects. And lastly, on September 10th, 2022, a victim in the Pharmacy Avenue and Sesame Street area had their vehicle stolen by two female and two male suspects at knife point. And it's been previously reported, as a result of this particular investigation, on Thursday, September 15th, a 15-year-old boy was arrested and charged with numerous robbery-related offenses. A 17-year-old boy was also arrested for the carjacking on September 10th. And he's going to be formally charged with a slew of robbery-related offenses in the near future. This past Thursday, September 29th, Valerie Torres-Lizcano, 18, of York Region, was arrested and charged in relation to this series of carjackings, and she too has been charged with numerous offenses, including 3 counts of robbery with a firearm, robbery with an offensive weapon, and 4 counts of disguise with intent. In another investigation, as recently as this just past Friday, Hasma Hussein, 18, of Toronto, was arrested for his role in a carjacking that took place on June 19th, 2022. During that incident, it's alleged a woman was approached by 2 men in the Albion Road and Islington Avenue Road area, and as she walked to her parked car, her vehicle too was stolen at gunpoint. When Hazmat was HAMZAH, Hussein, was arrested this past Friday, he was found to be in possession of a loaded firearm and prescription narcotics. Now, if we could go back to that series that I just spoke about where the 4 robberies took place and we made some previous arrests, we are searching for one more person, and we're looking for 18-year-old Jasmine Ung, O-U-N-G, of York Region. And a warrant is being sought for her arrest, and I strongly suggest that she seek legal counsel and turn herself in as soon as possible to any police station. And this is where I'm seeking the public's assistance in locating her, and again, would rather she get legal counsel and turn herself in as soon as possible. She's facing 1 count of robbery with an offensive weapon and 1 count of conspiracy to commit an indictable offense. Moving on to another investigation, we're also seeking the public's assistance in locating Samir Ejaz, E-J-A-Z. He's 20 years old, of Toronto. He is now, he's been arrested and charged in relation to a carjacking that took place on June 26 this year. And in that incident, it's alleged while armed with a firearm, he robbed the victim of his motorcycle, and he was arrested a short while later in possession of both the motorcycle and the firearm. He was charged with numerous charges related to robbery with a firearm and is disguised with intent and carrying a concealed weapon. He is currently now wanted on a warrant for failure to comply with court-imposed conditions, as it's alleged that he's removed his ankle bracelet and he is nowhere to be found. In conclusion, I want to let you know that we do really understand that these types of crimes have a lasting impact on the victims, and whether they're physically injured or not, we at the Hold Up Squad, in partnership with many investigative units, will continue to identify suspects, charge them, and return the vehicles to their owners. I'd like to end with a reminder of some simple safety tips that I've mentioned before that can help protect the public during these times or crimes of opportunity. If someone attempts to steal your car, please give up the vehicle. I've said that before. Do not argue, do not fight. Your safety is worth far more than the vehicle. Run to a safe place and call 911 immediately. Keep doors locked at all times, and if you feel threatened for whatever reason, sound your car alarm or call 911. Be aware of your surroundings. Try to park in well-lit areas and keep valuables out of sight. Subject to any questions, that's the update for today. Well, in general terms, I would say no, but where the evidence would suggest that there is an organized crime aspect, that too gets investigated. And with respect to the case that I just mentioned here, no evidence suggests that there was any level of organized crime involved.
Inspector, you mentioned, I think you said 182 carjackings in Toronto to date.
Yes.
Can you speak to how does this compare to years past, and what do you attribute this to?
Well, as I mentioned before, previous years we haven't seen these numbers at all. What we could attribute them to, in some occasions we see high-end vehicles being stolen, and we can definitely say that they're being used for resale, for profit. In other cases, we're seeing not so high-end vehicles being taken, and we're seeing them pop up in different types of crimes, other robberies, shooting investigations, and that sort of stuff. So to say generically what the motive is, each story and investigation tells its own story.
Can you just review again, where are we to date for carjackings this year over last?
Okay, so to date, we're at 182 reported carjackings, and as of last year, the total for 2021 was 102, sorry.
What kind of vehicles are we, I mean, I know that obviously in the past we've reported on Range Rovers, but are there certain vehicles that are more targeted than others that you see?
No, well, any high-end vehicle, Mercedes, BMWs, we're seeing Porsche, Lamborghinis, when we're talking the high-end vehicles, and then when we're seeing the not-so-high-end vehicles, we're seeing a lot of Hondas, we're seeing a lot of Toyotas, sedans. There's no rhyme or reason with respect to the lower-end vehicles. I mean, immediately one thing takes their mind to profit when the higher-end vehicles are being taken. And again, each case tells its own story when we see the not-so-high-end vehicles taken.
This gentleman, Samir Ejaz, last question mark, he was released on a prompt, obviously with an ankle bracelet.
Yes.
And I know you don't want to comment on what's going on with the courts, but how discouraging is this that you make an arrest in a carjacking investigation only to find out that the accused has breached his conditions and taken off that bracelet?
Well, there are a number of factors that have to be considered when bail is granted. And I'm not, again, you're right, I'm not here to discuss that. The fact is, he was granted bail. and he was to wear an ankle bracelet as part of his release condition, and unfortunately, he's now has to explain why he cut his ankle bracelet off, and that's why we're seeking the public's assistance in locating him and arresting him and putting him right back before the courts.
You were hesitant to lay any sort of motive across the board, or could some of these, even the low-end vehicles, could some of these carjackings just be bad? Is it just a cool thing for young people to do now, or maybe even the gang initiation path?
Those are all avenues that have to be explored at the time of the conclusion of the case or during the investigation of the case. And like I said, each investigation tells a different story. Whether or not they're doing it for initiation reasons or joyriding whatsoever, the fact remains is that they're actually, there's a huge propensity for violence. And quite frankly, as I said before, the communities at a whole are feeling the effects of these carjackings. And that's mostly what I'm here to do, to reassure the public that we will continue to do everything we can in partnerships with not only our internal partners, but our external partners to address carjackings and bring these to successful conclusions in very short order. Well, as I mentioned, these cases, there were firearms used in these. Sometimes we're seeing knives. Sometimes we're used, physical force is used. But vast majority, unfortunately, are firearms being used.
And how's the judge develop on the case? I mean, you see such a slide.
Well, again, I can only put myself in the shoes of the victims, and I can only imagine the fear that's inflicted upon the victims and a community. Quite frankly, I hear from community members that say that, you know, this is a troubling trend, and I agree with them. So, like I said, we're doing everything we can to address this, and of course, I would be concerned, and I would heed to those safety tips. Know your surroundings, and if it doesn't feel right, go with your instincts.
Okay, one more question. 182 reported carjackings this year. Are there any patterns as to where they're happening in the city? Any places that are maybe more frequently visited?
Yeah. So once these carjackings take place, we have an investigative support unit that is second to none, and we use analytics to basically try and predict not necessarily where it's going to happen, but we can basically say where the hotspots are, where they have happened. And there's a uniform response and there's plainclothes response. It's not only the whole squad that's responding to it; it's a service as a whole. And so basically, they pay special attention to these areas in efforts to thwart the intentions of the would-be robbers. We have seen it up and down the Yonge Street corridor. We've seen it in the west end of the city. We've seen it in Scarborough as well, the east end of the city as well. Those are the three main areas that we see these taking place, but where the next one's going to take place is anyone's question.
You said you've recovered like 50-some vehicles this year alone. Recently, there was a Ferrari that was carjacked.
Yes.
It was recovered. Can you speak to that one?
That's an ongoing investigation. Unfortunately, I can't, but we do. That is part of the numbers of vehicles. The 56 that I just mentioned, that is one of the vehicles.
And are these happening mostly at night, or are we seeing them during the day as well?
We're seeing some daylight ones as well. Many of them do happen at nighttime, but we have seen some as early as 9, 10 in the morning.
That concludes today's conference. We did just release 3 news releases that summarizes all these cases that the inspector spoke about. Thank you.
Thank you.